Minister, you're very welcome to the House, Minister. Massachusetts Institute of Technology, world-renowned. Nobody ever had to call it a university. I was president of the Teachers' Union of Ireland when we started the Technological University drive. I wasn't convinced. I'm still not convinced that we needed to refer to these institutions as universities. The previous speaker, Senator Byrne, spoke of the tremendous record of the regional technical colleges which subsequently became the IOTs, and now we're driving forward into technological universities. But if I can step back a little first, you're also the Minister with responsibility for further education, and I'm delighted to see that, because a man with your drive and energy is what's needed. I was always impressed by your drive when you were in health, and I hope you bring the same to this. The further education sector was starved from the time it came about, and we all know it came about through osmosis. Schools with empty classrooms looking for courses to fill. The one problem we had, and this is a challenge for you going forward, is a student would take a 2-year course in a further education college. I remember my own courses were in the area of networking, computer network systems and operating systems. And a student would get a level 6 qualification in my college and would progress on to one of the Dublin colleges, typically, and would have to go back and do the level 6. Because level 6 in FE and in higher ed, they weren't the same, even though they were. There was, on the national framework, there was nothing to separate them. So what we've got to see is we have to see much closer cooperation between further education and higher education, and particularly now that we have technological universities, we've got to do that. But in the technological university sphere, we also have to do what's been done internationally, and that is that we have to hold vocational education and academic education as peer equals. We have to ensure that we have pathways where a student can move from a vocational trajectory over to an academic one and back to vocational if that's what they want to do. We have to have vocational qualifications that go to level 10. So, if we're really serious about tackling the future in education, that's where we need to go. And I will now speak about Dublin Technological University. I was extremely impressed by the attitude taken by my members of the TUI at the time and the management and governing bodies in DIT, IT Blanchardstown and IT Tala. The work they did together to get that organisation off the ground was incredible. The level of cooperation, there were difficulties, I'm not going to pretend there weren't, but the level of cooperation, the mantra seemed to be solve the problem. Don't finish up in the Labour Court or the WRC or whatever. Solve the problems, whatever the problems were. And they did a tremendous job. And I am really proud to see them up and running, even though I have some misgivings about the idea. Let's move on. We're 1 month away from Munster Technological University, and today they were in the Workplace Relations Commission. And they will be in the Workplace Relations Commission for the next, I don't know how long. Somebody needs to go and knock heads together and get the differences that exist between staff and the management, needs to get that out of the way and get this project up and running. If this is the direction we're going, and incidentally, the same applies to Carlow and Waterford. There were cosmetic differences, for the want of a better description, between the two colleges. Both excellent institutions. But for one reason or another, they're not as good as us, or we're better than them. That sort of nonsense creeped in, and we need to get that out of the way. Just knock heads together and move it on. I want to see the South East develop as well. Okay, I still have misgivings about the notion of technological universities, but I think now that we've committed to it, let's drive it forward and drive it forward quickly. The staff and staffing, my colleague has already referred to the issue of teaching contracts. The one thing that held back the IoTs was the fact that those who were employed as lecturers within the system. They were employed in order to deliver programmes in classrooms or in lecture halls. There was no real facility for research. A lot of research went on, but there was no real facility, and a lot of it was ad hoc arrangements and the like. So what we need to do is we need to drive that forward, and we need to drive that forward with contracts of employment that actually ring-fence hours for research within the system, and I want to see that happen. The monies you announced, Minister, that's relatively new from what I gathered, the 90 million, because we were expecting these institutes to sort of work within their own budgets to try and put together technological universities. So I'm really, really pleased to see that you have put this money in place. That is really a great step forward. And going back to my further education, I hope you have some money for them as well. When you're rooting around in your pocket at some stage, you might find it. But that really is important. The ability to borrow in order to carry out research and in order to develop their colleges, again, a fantastic idea. The one thing I would like to see is additional funding for innovation centres associated with each of the TUs in order that we can get micro businesses to kick off within the university structure and then perhaps branch out as has happened in UCD, DCU, etc. So I'd like to see that. I have a concern about the Connacht Ulster establishment, and that goes back to a meeting I had with the president of Letterkenny many years ago, and his favourite option was to link up with the University of Ulster. Now, I do know that there's a problem there with respect to the fact that we have Brexit coming down the road and we're no longer one big happy family within the EU. But the point he made to me at the time is no different today than it was then. And he was saying, if a meeting was called in GMIT, in Renmore and Galway, it was a day's drive down to attend the meeting, stay overnight and a day's drive back. And he said that's just nonsense when I could drive across the border and have a meeting with University of Ulster. So as part of the Shared Island Forum, I think we need to develop the East-West relationships, if you want, that should exist there. So the University of Ulster and Donegal. Galway Sligo, I think that's pushing it as far as you really can. You've Galway, Mayo, Sligo, and that's quite a chunk of the country, so it is. The Athlone Limerick one is a bit odd. Geographically, they don't sit neatly together, but nonetheless, I'm delighted to see that they've come into the frame as well and that they're working in that particular area. Now, I got hung for this shortly after I came in to the Oireachtas when I wrote an article about delivery of educational programmes. I would like to see educational programmes delivered from 9 in the morning till 9 at night. Modular, as my colleague Senator Byrne said, modular programmes where I can opt in and opt out. I'll finish very, very quickly on this. Look, at the end of the day, I wish you well as you go forward with this programme. I think you're the man to drive it. I would be happy to assist in any way I can, providing I'm not shot by my former union members as I leave here today. But I do want to see much longer and more accessibility, as Senator Byrne has said. So thank you very much, Minister. Thank you.